This whole thing began when I was browsing Twitter recently and found a tweet that read the following. "For the love of God, please just let people do what they want with their art. It's not that hard, crying face emoji." And posted alongside that was a caption of a video called "Making Your OCs Not Suck." Anyway, this piqued my interest and I decided to watch the video to see what the fuck was going on. It doesn't help that I've kind of wanted to tear into one of these OC advice videos for a very long time, and let me just say, this is far from the worst one I've seen, but it's still not particularly good. Before I continue, I should note that I am not an artist, nor am I an OC maker. I'm just basing my critiques off of common sense and what I understand about concepts like story structure, as well as what an audience member would typically pick up on. Now, the more astute among you might notice that this thumbnail includes warnings that your OC may be both too boring and too much. Too much of what? I'm not entirely sure, but that's another topic. However, the concept of an OC that's too much isn't actually really mentioned at any point in the video. It's all advice for how to not make your character boring, but not on how to stop yourself from creating too much. The closest we get is a warning that if you put too many scars on a character, it will cause said scars to take over the character's story, and possibly cause people to constantly say hello to my little friend anytime they come across said character. Okay, I made up the second one.
If they're covered in scars, that's going to take over their story.
Honestly, I'm not even sure what the issue with the design labeled too much even is. It's visually interesting, and it does a good job both telling me the character's current emotions and presumably giving me a decent idea as to what the character is like. But what are the pieces of advice that you need to implement to not have a OC that's too boring? Well, first off, give it character traits.
The first thing I'd like to suggest is giving them more verbs. Now, what does that actually mean? So, whether you're writing your character into a book or whether you're like drawing them or just making an OC, a lot of the times people kind of focus on one aspect of their character. Like sometimes it's their job, like let's say that there's a knight or they work at an office or something. Sometimes people don't go much farther than that. So the key thing that you want to think about is making sure to give them more verbs, which basically just means like other things that they like to do. This can be really helpful when you don't really know how you want to draw them. You just feel like you want to draw them. If you know their hobbies and stuff, it can be a lot easier to like figure out their pose and the things you want to draw them with. What sort of accessories and things that they are attracted to can be sort of controlled by what they like to do. So giving them things that they like to do other than just their main thing, whatever their main job is, can really make them feel more fleshed out.
Oh, by the way, I should let you all know, LavenderTowne drags out her points way more than she needs to. I put that clip through the timecode feature in Sony Vegas, and it was 1 frame short of 56 seconds for what essentially amounted to give your character hobbies. Well, on the topic of her presentation, she also talks in this fairly whispery voice, and the music occasionally gets loud enough to where it starts to drown her out. It's not a particularly big deal, but it is noticeable. The next recommendation LavenderTowne gives is, which is pretty damn good. However, then she starts talking about how backstory can influence design, and the video officially loses me. Just watch for a second.
So for example, I drew this 21-year-old first. She seems very bland and basic, but then I thought maybe she was sort of goth or emo or like a scene kid when she was 16, and maybe when she was 12 she was like a huge science nerd and she loved dinosaurs and had braces, and maybe when she was a little baby she really used her pacifier a lot and had sort of like downy fluffy hair, you know, like some babies have. And then when I redrew the 21-year-old with all of these factors in mind, she has straight teeth because of her braces. She has a slightly more exaggerated wing on her eye because she used to be an emo kid. And she's wearing dinosaur earrings because her interest in dinosaurs when she was 12, as well as the little downy bits of hair that kind of fly off of her main hairstyle that's just latent sort of genetics from when she was a baby and had curly hair.
Okay, the teeth and the curly hair I get, but I don't get the wing and I do not get the earrings. From what I can tell, those are parts of the character's past that they've dropped. Why would that influence their design today as an adult several years after the fact? We all have former hobbies, things we used to be interested in but no longer are. We also all used to have styles that we've since dropped. And part of losing those interests and dropping those styles is losing the parts that make the fact that you have those hobbies or styles visually recognizable to the people around you. To put it another way, this girl is not going to still keep wearing dinosaur earrings at 21 because she had an interest in dinosaurs at 12. Most kids had interests in dinosaurs, and very few of them wear dinosaur earrings. The same demand that literally everything about a character be visually noticeable can be found in her advice about imperfections. And by the way, by imperfections, she doesn't mean character flaws. She means visual imperfections.
Really, imperfections can be even more subtle things like chipped nail polish and imperfect hairstyles. Now, if you're creating a character who, by their very nature, is extremely meticulous, or perhaps they've been to like boot camp or some other like kind of like private school, things that sort of force you to be as perfect as you can be, even in those cases, you should still probably draw imperfections on your characters just because everybody is human and there's wind and things that you can't control. But
out of curiosity, are you related to a guy named Jon Favreau? The biggest thing that bothers me about this video is the implication that every single character trait an OC has should be visually represented, when, truth be told, that's not even close to the case. If you're creating an original character and you plan to use them in a story, then things like the dialogue of the story and the setting the story takes place in are equally important and equally valid ways of telling the audience about the character as their design. Let's use SpongeBob as an example for the point I'm trying to make. After all, he is one of the, if not the most recognizable children's character of the 21st century. Now tell me, what about his design informs you that he works at the Krusty Krab as a fry cook? Hell, what about his design so much as implies that? Well, the answer is nothing. In fact, there are two things about his design which completely contradict it. Those are the fact that he's yellow, when in color theory, yellow usually means being young and childish, while fast food jobs like the one SpongeBob works at are usually staffed by teenagers, and his red tie, which actually goes too far in the other direction, as ties are typically worn at formal jobs, as opposed to, again, fast food ones. Because do you guys know what I personally call a character who I can learn everything about just through looking at their design once? I call them boring as fuck. SpongeBob, on the other hand, has aspects about him that are not immediately noticeable. This leads me to wonder, what other things about him aren't immediately noticeable? I want to watch him go through adventures so I can learn about him and see how he reacts to things. From seeing them, I'll learn more about his character. And there's always going to be that possibility that maybe one day he'll mention something or have some trait that I was completely unaware of the entire time, which I started watching his series with an understanding of. It also causes me to wonder if there are other characters who have other traits that aren't immediately obvious and want to explore this world that's being created in front of me. It makes me more invested in the story that it's less obvious what kind of character SpongeBob is. The video actually ends with LavenderTowne creating her own OC based off of these rules, and design-wise, it's okay. I mean, it gives us the information it wants to. However, to be blunt, I have no real interest in seeing this character in any story or future work because I already know everything I need to know about them in order to determine how they're going to react to any given situation. What other thing is there to really grab me? Are they funny, interesting, charismatic, smart, stupid? Actually, I'm surprised giving them an independent personality wasn't mentioned. So, final thoughts? This is far from a terrible video, but again, it puts too much emphasis on one part of OC making and then calls it a day. Good night and good luck.